So as we talked before, many times when we have voice problems, we have complaints with the voice. We might have loss of range, voice fatigue, hoarseness, pain, loss of control, pops, glitches, cracks where we don't want them. And many of those complaints that we have with the voice are all caused by many things. They're not usually caused by one thing. We kind of lump the causes into three different categories. And the first one we're going to talk about right now is the abusive things that we do to our voice. These are the things that are just plain mean to the voice. Most of it, everybody knows. If I do this, I get hoarse tomorrow. If I yell at a ball game, if I scream over a concert, something like that, if I cough and clear my throat, I'm going to get hoarse tomorrow. So a lot of them are obvious. Some of them are not as obvious as others. And so we're going to go through and talk about what all could be considered an abuse. These are the only things that we typically want to avoid if we need our voice to do our job or to sing with or whatever we're trying to do with it. We have to protect it to an extent and make some choices about what we're going to avoid and what we're going to do, knowing that it might cause problems with our voice. Obviously, I mentioned yelling and shouting. Smoking is one that everybody knows. People eventually, if they smoke enough, the gunk and the junk and the heat and the dryness over time will cause the vocal cords to swell. They get extremely fat and puffy, and then they make a very low pitch. We typically call this a smoker's voice, and everybody's kind of familiar with the sound of what that sounds like. And it would happen regardless of if you talked or not, just from smoking. So that kind of change can happen. Vaping as well, because it has the chemicals and things in it, can cause any of that. It doesn't matter what you're smoking or what is going through. The vocal cords don't like the chronic irritant and especially the heat and dryness of that. So smoking's bad. Throat clearing and coughing. Everybody's usually fine whenever they're sick until they start coughing or until they're constantly clearing their throat. And every time we clear our throat or cough, we're just banging those vocal cords together. They're just hitting on the edges, hitting on the edges, hitting on the edges. And they'll only do it so long, and then they talk back and they'll say, we don't have to take this anymore. We're going to form some extra padding and protect ourselves. And that's when we get changes to the edges. A lot of times it's the same type of change that would happen with yelling or screaming, cheerleading. 4-year-old boys who like to make animal noises and grunts and crazy sounds, those are the people who get lots of changes to the edges from that chronic beating on the edge. Another thing that can affect the vocal cords that can be considered sort of abusive would be if you have hormone levels that are unbalanced or if you have allergies that are untreated. Those things in and of themselves do not usually cause major vocal cord changes. However, they can add to the mix and be considered abusive if they last for long periods of time and they go untreated. So those can be something we consider that way. The other thing that happens, like I said, with coughing is when we get sick, if we just use it and use it and use it, if it's already down and we just keep beating on it, then it's going to talk back. And so a lot of times if there's already swelling there from coughing or we use it when we're sick, then we get some issues going on. So what do you do when you get sick? Because that does happen. There's not a whole lot, unfortunately, that we can do when someone gets sick. Most of the time it's a virus. It just has to go away, and it takes some time. The main thing is you've got to listen to your body. You've got to pamper yourself. You've got to have lots and lots and lots and lots of water and rest, and just kind of let it gauge itself and tell you what you need to do. So the other thing that we have to do when we're sick is keep everything kind of clean back there. A lot of times it comes from our sinuses. We have drainage coming down the back of our throat, so we want to do some nasal rinsing, gargling, anything like that to keep it clean. You can do rinsing and gargling all you want. You can't hurt anything back there, and at least it keeps things thin and keeps it from draining down and causing you to cough more. Stuff's still going to come out your airway. You're still going to have issues. We just want you to avoid the short-acting medications that are over the counter, some of the 4-hour pops, decongestants and antihistamines. If you need something, talk to your doctor about something more 24-hour or longer acting so that it doesn't pack so much drying punch into it, especially if you still need to use your voice. If you can't shut down or use it less and still need to go on, then we need to make sure that we use the least drying, most beneficial medications out there. So you can talk to your physician about that. Don't ever overdo vitamins, vitamin C, all that kind of good stuff. Some of it is great in moderation, but if you do too much, sometimes it backfires on you and the body can't process that much. So it actually hurts us instead of helps. So just be careful you don't overdo things. Steroids are an option. However, steroids we only do in case of an emergency. They have major side effects that can happen over time if used over and over again that you don't want. You don't want your bones breaking and have a face that puffs out like a moon. So we want to be careful about those. We also can't use them back to back close together. They stay in your system for a while. So if you get a steroid shot or take steroids today, you can't do it again in 2 weeks. And there may be something more important in 2 weeks you'd rather have your voice for than today. So we have to do that very sparingly, and it only works if you're hoarse because there's swelling. It doesn't work in all cases. If the vocal cords are very stiff and full of mucus in the duct system and junk like that, the steroids won't help at all. So we want to be sure that that is necessary before we do anything like that.
Hi, I'm Melissa Lancaster, and I want to welcome you to Praise and Harmony TV. Here on this app or website, whichever you're using, you'll find countless videos on how to sing, vocal care, music theory, training for individual songs, and learning harmony parts, music videos and lyric videos for your church to stream, children's content, and so much more. We are adding new content every day, so be sure to take a look around and be sure to sign up for your 3-day free trial.
So getting sick happens, and we just have to manage it and manage it the best as possible. The other thing that can affect the vocal cords at times that many times doctors will treat people for is reflux. Reflux is not usually the sole cause of hoarseness or a voice problem. Reflux happens whenever we don't fully digest our food. Usually then we will lay down and the food or liquid will seep back up through the top of the esophagus, which is behind the vocal cords. And at night especially, it could leak over and cause people to cough or clear their throat or generate more mucus. So they could be more hoarse in the morning. They could have a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth and have more mucus and junk from reflux if it happens overnight. Usually people who have severe reflux will know it. They know that they have reflux. They'll get hoarse after eating, they'll get hoarse in the mornings, and they can feel it. There are a percentage of people who don't notice it, who have what we call silent reflux. It's not always significant enough to affect our voice, but it does exist. But usually we can see the effects of that reflux in the larynx area. So you always want to make sure you have someone examine your vocal cords and larynx before going and just taking reflux medications to make sure there really is some damage and they can see that that acid has been burning the top of the esophagus area. Remember, it's not really on the vocal cords itself, but in the back area near the back. So that is something that can affect things, but not usually the top thing, kind of like allergies. Allergies can affect us. If we go in a room and there's a cat, we're allergic to cats, we're going to get hoarse within 20-30 minutes. But as soon as we leave, we should start getting better. So those kind of things are usually short-term effects, not long-term, everyday, all-day effects on the voice. So the last abusive thing is something that many of us are guilty of, and that is dehydration. The vocal cords, like I said, sit in your airway and they get dry because we're fanning them all day, and they have to have a certain amount of water in the system to make the mucus thin on top. If there's not enough water in the system, the mucus gets thick and then we feel it and we want to clear it off. It gets very sticky and sometimes it just gets non-existent. So they will feel kind of scratchy, parched, irritated. And that's usually due to dryness most of the time. The other thing is the vocal cords need that water on the inside of them. Remember, they are muscles, and just like other muscles, they have to have hydration on the inside. The layers of tissue on top of them have to have moisture in them as well in order to keep the skin pliable and flexible and flowing from the air that's coming through them. So in order to stay hydrated, we have to drink water. And unfortunately, water is the only thing that goes in to the vocal cords and the muscles and keeps that mucosa thin on top. It doesn't matter if it's hot, cold, lukewarm. Some of it gets in faster than others, but really, as long as we get the water in, that's the most critical thing. Rule of thumb is that we want to get a goodly amount of water in. Most people will quote 64 ounces of water a day. It does depend on your metabolism, how much you sweat, and also if you have any drying agents that are pulling water out of your system. The big dryers are caffeine, alcohol, menthol, as in cough drops or Vicks Vapor Rub type stuff, and over-the-counter sinus medicines like the 4-hour kind I mentioned before, so Sudafed, Benadryls, those kind of things, or smoking because of the heat. There are also some other prescription medications that have drying as a side effect. Blood pressure medications, diuretics, things like that are some of the top ones. Many heart medications will cause dryness and have that as a side effect. Acne medications are another one of those. So anything that we take that is drying, we have to account for in extra water. So typically I like to tell my patients that if we get in 6 to 8 glasses of water a day, we're usually pretty good. We all think in 16.9 ounce bottles from the store now, so that means 4 bottles of water. If we drink 4 bottles of water, we can afford to have one drying thing, whether that be a medication, a cup of coffee. That does not mean a grande size coffee. It means a regular size cup of coffee. And everything is not equivalent. People brew things differently. I realize it. Different things have different amounts of caffeine. But we want to make sure that we have enough water to balance out anything we took out. Unfortunately, the drying things take a lot out faster than the water goes in. So 30 minutes after you drink your cup of coffee, you could be clearing your throat and dry and feeling some repercussions from that. The water doesn't go in super quick. It has to kind of be there already to counteract things and keep the tissues moist. So if we can keep the water high and the drying stuff really low, then great. On days when you need your voice to do better or you start noticing more problems, you've got to crank even more water in. We can replace and counteract some of the drying stuff by stacking more water on top, but nobody is going to be able to drink, enough to counteract a pot of coffee a day. It's just not humanly possible. So we do have to be careful about how many drying agents we get in, and more importantly, we've got to get the water in to counteract anything that might come along.
Hi, I'm Melissa Lancaster, and I want to welcome you to Praise and Harmony TV. Here on this app or website, whichever you're using, you'll find countless videos on how to sing, vocal care, music theory, training for individual songs, and learning harmony parts, music videos and lyric videos for your church to stream, children's content, and so much more. We are adding new content every day, so be sure to take a look around and be sure to sign up for your 3-day free trial.